Set this up. There we go. So the 2024-25 season is officially in the books. And for this year, I figured let's end it with a live stream. I was going to do a news video after I did the London Knights offseason outlook, but I thought, why don't we have it up? We'll open it up to discussion for whoever wants to take part. Talk about the 2024-25 OHL season and where do we go from here as the Ontario Hockey League and even as the channel. So this has been a great year of growth here on the channel after completing the second season from the booth with Mike. We had 660 subscribers over the last 12 months. So it's been incredible growth, and we'll see where the channel goes from here. But with last night, the London Knights winning the Memorial Cup over the Medicine Hat Tigers, that officially opens the OHL trade window for the month of June. This time last year, I believe, is when we had those first trades involving the Flint Firebirds. I remember those trades with the Sudbury Wolves and the Kingston Frontenacs. That's when they acquired Evan Conyon and company from the Wolves and Chris Thibodeau from the Frontenacs. So I would not be surprised if we start seeing some movement now in the next couple of days, although the NCAA situation is definitely having an impact on what teams are doing in the off season. So stay tuned for that. I'll do videos here on the channel when we do find out any sort of trades, but the trade window officially open for the month of June. Plus, we got the import draft coming up as well to look forward to now that OHL teams allowed to have 3 imports on their roster. So we'll see how that's going to play out. There's also been speculation that the OHL might expand the overage situation. That has not yet been confirmed, but stay tuned for that. Once we have any sort of details or I hear anything, I'll pass it along here on the channel. But one news item that we've been following has been the Niagara Ice Dogs. It sounds like we're about to get an announcement as to who the new general manager will be. And all indications are Frank Evola. He's right now, or he has been, with the Windsor Spitfires as the director of scouting. And it sounds as though that he will become the new general manager of the Niagara Ice Dogs, just waiting for an official announcement from the team after just that situation that's been playing out. So we'll stay tuned for that, but it does sound like right now, Jeff Merrick, he even posted it on X that expected Wola to be officially introduced as the general manager of the Niagara Ice Dogs. And Gilroy said, what did London do right over the offseason at the trade deadline that led them to another successful season? I think for the London Knights, it was their determination with that core of players. Easton Cowan, Denver Barkey, of course, growing through their junior hockey careers, the London Knights. And I feel as though this team they're determined. And Dale Hunter had the systems in place. This team played in a very intimidating style. We saw that with the amount of penalty minutes they took during the regular season and in the playoffs. So I just feel as though that this team just destined to go on that mission. I was surprised, though, they didn't go perfect 3-0 at the round robin. So maybe that adversity kind of helped when they played the Medicine Hat Tigers. But that's a team that was determined. They just seem like a team of destiny to win the OHL title this year and the Memorial Cup. Although, give credit to the Oshawa Generals. They gave them a scare there at the start of the OHL final. It's just London Knights able to take things over and ultimately win that OHL championship. So give credit to the Knights, although that team's going to look very different next season. But the question now, does Sam Dickinson get returned by the San Jose Sharks? And if that's the case, will they build around that to try and go on a run? There's also speculation about some other moves that they might be making. So time will tell. But I don't expect we'll see any trades involving the Knights only for a couple of weeks here as they just get ready for the celebration. I believe tonight's supposed to be the Memorial Cup celebration parade tonight in London. So we'll see what the Knights do next year. So the team, they got a lot of graduating players. Of course, Easton Cowan, he's going to go off play with the Toronto Maple Leafs next year or the Toronto Marlies. Barkey, Bonk, they'll be moving on. So this is just a very loaded team. And I think for a lot of other Western Conference opponents, I think they're a little relieved that some of those players are moving on going into next season. Although there's so much unknown going into next season, it's going to be fascinating just to see how it all plays out. We just heard, too, that Jack Ivankovic sounds like he's going to be going to Michigan State after being drafted in the NHL. So we're still hearing players going off to the NCAA. We also heard Henry Muse is leaving Sudbury. Malcolm Spence is leaving the Erie Otters. There's rumors about Porter Martone leaving the Brampton Steelheads. So it seems as though we're going into a landscape of uncertainty around the Ontario Hockey League next year. As usually at this time, you could say, okay, this is the clear-cut team that's going to be the tops in the West or in the Eastern Conference. But the way things are looking right now with the rosters, I don't think we have that clear-cut team. Obviously, Niagara, I think if they could get things figured out with everything that's been going on in the offseason or in the playoffs, maybe Niagara could be considered a team that could win the Eastern Conference next year if they get the pieces right. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty still with that organization. That's where they need this new GM in place, a new head coach, and try and get the ship on the right path here for the Niagara Ice Dogs. So, yeah, so much uncertainty going into next year, but kudos to the London Knights. What a great run it was for them, and now winning their third Memorial Cup championship in franchise history. Although I know there's quite a few OHL fans who are not that pleased to see the London Knights win the OHL championship and the Memorial Cup, but somebody's got to win it, and someone's also got to be the villain. And I guess the London Knights, they're okay with that because it means another championship banner to be raised at Canada Life Place come September. And also to note, we should know in the next couple of weeks what the schedule is going to look like for next season. Sounds like mid-June is the target, so maybe in 2 weeks we'll find out what the schedule is going to look like for next year. So stay tuned for that. And I know for the channel here, I'm hoping to do more road games next year. So it was great to go on the road last season, especially in the playoffs. Met some great fans in Kingston and in Oshawa. Even did a road trip to Brampton and met a few Steelhead fans. So it's been great to go out on the road and just to be encouraged by those who've been subscribed to the channel so far and be tuning in on a regular basis and then meeting them in person. I didn't realize how many people were tuning in from outside Barrie, and it's just really cool to be able to experience that. So for the channel next year, looking to go on the road a little more often. Those details are still being ironed out, but we'll have to wait and see what all transpires on that front. FYI, keep the beard. Great look for you. Well, I appreciate that. I was actually, I told my wife yesterday and my one of my daughters that I was thinking of shaving today, and both immediately said no. So beard's been on a little longer than I thought it would be. So we'll have to wait and see. Although I don't usually do well with the heat, so see how this all plays out. Maybe I'll be indoors a little more often if I'm going to have the beard going any further from here. But appreciate it. Thank you very much for that compliment. I'm not usually a beard person, but we'll see where it goes from here. So, yeah, so it's been a great run this year. Of course, we're going to wait and see what happens now with the Barrie Colts. We have the coaching change that was announced as Dylan Smoskowitz. He's going to take over behind the bench. Marty Williamson going on as general manager. So it's a big, exciting news there with the Barrie Colts. There was some uncertainty with the direction of the team. There's a lot of rumors going around involving the Colts and the Ice Dogs about whether or not Marty Williamson was a candidate for the new GM role in Niagara, but obviously with Marty moving on to be a GM now full-time of the Barrie Colts, that's why his name was no longer being mentioned. You also had George Burnett at one point. He's, of course, with the Guelph Storm. I thought that was kind of odd that his name was being brought forward, but it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out for the Barrie Colts. Alex Moskowitz, who's been an assistant coach now for the last 3 seasons, getting his first shot as head coach of the team he once played for. He's excited. He's a player's coach. He's got great relationships with those players. Colts having quite a few players returning. They should be one of those teams that could contend for top spot in the Central Division next year when you've got the legs of Cole Bodwin, Miley Patterson, Keyshawn Aitchison, and then Ben Horevic in net. So Barrie Colts looking like they're in a good spot. But it's going to look different not having Marty Williamson on the bench next year. He'll be up in the press box, or he'll be touring other junior hockey rinks just to do some scouting and recruiting. But I think it makes sense, especially the way the landscape is now with the NCAA. You've got more pressure to keep players or to entice players to come, and you need that GM to have that full-time role. So it's going to be quite the difference seeing how it all plays out. As now that leaves James Richmond of the Brampton Steelheads right now as the last GM/coach in the Ontario Hockey League. And as Zachary says, Ivan Kovic is going to Michigan. Yeah, I saw that, which is the rumor was that he was exploring the NCAA routes, and it's now come out that he's going to be going off to Michigan. So it's the landscape is changing so much, and I kind of feel bad for fans of the Brampton Steelheads. As you move into this, we move into Brampton for your first season. You have all these high expectations. I was expecting the Steelheads to be one of the contenders in the East, but of course, they got off that slow start. The injuries, Angus McDonnell missing a large portion of the season, and then the team clicked in the final second half. But come playoff time, the Oshawa Generals, they were a team on a mission. So now losing Ivan Kovic, it's a tough spot, although we still have to have that official confirmation, but all signs are pointing Ivan Kovic off to Michigan. It sounds like Martone, he's also going to be moving on to the NCAA. So Ivan Kovic, he's going to be joining Henry Muse, as Mike's posting there. Yeah, Henry Muse, Malcolm Spence, both players moving off to the NCAA. I'm almost wondering if this is, we're bringing here more names, especially after the upcoming NHL draft. If you remember back in December, there was even speculation that Michael Misa could go on to Boston College. They were trying to recruit him. So what happens with Michael Misa? I figure he'll be drafted and he'll play in the NHL next year, but it's just there's so much uncertainty right now. Obviously, though, these players who commit to the NCAA could still come back. We saw that with Blake Montgomery, who was committed. He ended up going to the London Knights. Noah Powell, he joined the Oshawa Generals. So there is the chance that some of those players could come back. Even seeing the meetings of the commissioners in Rimouski, they were even saying there's so much uncertainty. They kind of wonder if maybe players are thinking the grass is greener on the other side, but they're not going to be playing as many games. You're also going to have more competition. You're going to be playing against older players. So there's that chance that maybe some of these players, they still start in the NCAA and then maybe they come back. So it's still so many questions, so much speculation, but this landscape is changing so fast when it comes to junior hockey. Ringside with hits and clips, Oshawa Generals head coach Brad Malone just named an assistant coach of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. So that's a huge news there for the Generals. So good for Brad Malone, especially since he was named head coach of the Generals late. So yeah, we're going to see more of these changes during the offseason, and Malone did a great job with what he had. Obviously, there was a lot of questions about the Oshawa Generals when they made their move with the head coach, but Malone coming in, he was able to help guide his team to the OHL final. Obviously, Pouliot helping as an assistant coach during that playoff run was big, but that's big news that Brad Malone joining the Penguins. So we'll see now that we've got a head coaching vacancy in Oshawa, so we'll have to wait and see what happens on that front. And Mike says, it seems like every drafted prospect may go to the NCAA. Do you think Matthew Schaefer may go NCAA since he missed so much this season? Yeah, that's another name I'm curious about. I was almost wondering, too, if Schaefer gets drafted first overall by the Islanders, maybe they'll send him to junior. It all depends. These NCAA schools, they were sending recruiters as soon as that vote was done. I remember at the Saddlein Arena during the season, you start to see some NCAA guys showing up at the rinks and wanting to speak to these guys as they want to bring in the best talent available. So, yeah, Schaefer might be a possibility. Remember, he started the season out due to mono, and then with the broken collarbone or the clavicle, he missed significant time. So an NCAA option could be there for Matthew Schaefer, but I almost wonder if he'd be better suited to return to the Erie Otters. Because I think Erie is a team that, yeah, they had disappointing results last year, especially when you miss so much time with Schaefer. You had the passing of Jim Waters, the owner of the Erie Otters, and then Stan Butler being let go. I'd like to see maybe if Schaefer came back, Erliden and net. I feel like if you build from the back end out, maybe the Otters still have a chance. I wouldn't consider them a heavy favorite to win the Western Conference next year, but Schaefer would definitely give them that possibility. But an NCAA option, it's hard to say no, especially with Malcolm Spence now moving on. Zachary says, I'm excited for the new players the Steelhead has drafted. And it's that's the thing about the OHL. I feel like it's starting to get a little younger. And with Arda and Green, I feel like these are two players that the Steelheads can build around. But it's such an interesting dynamic right now because do you only have these players for 2 seasons and then do they move on to the NCAA? How long do they ride it out? So Green, of course, the first defenseman that was selected. There's been a lot of excitement around his game. And for James Richmond, he likes that defensive style. And I feel as though he's going to fit in nicely. Arda has that size as well. So Trading away Valentini, that was tough. Sending him off to the Kitchener Rangers is playing rights, but getting a compulsory pick, so you got 2 first-round quality players. I feel as though if they play their cards right, Brampton will step back next year. Hopefully, they can make the playoffs and continue that momentum with the fan base. But I feel as though Brampton should be in a decent spot. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Plus, you still have Gillespie and Ned as an overage goaltender. So Brampton's the Steelheads are in a very interesting position going forward. And then Mike also says we'll see fewer 19 and 20-year-olds in the OHL now. Yeah, that's where we're already seeing that, especially with a lot of the 19-year-olds committing, like Sam Hillebrand committing to Ohio State. I think caught some people by surprise because of the tandem the Colts were looking to have next year. Hillebrand and Horebic, they were solid throughout the regular season. And then now Hillebrand not returning for an OA season to go the NCAA route. So the OHL, or the Canadian Hockey League in general, seems to be going the younger route. But there was also a point, I believe it was a year ago, we started hearing rumors that maybe with the new CBA agreement between the NHLPA and the NHL, that they would like to see more OHLers, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, being eligible for the American Hockey League. I haven't heard anything on that since, especially now with the whole NCAA thing. But all these changes right now really affecting the landscape of junior hockey. And you have to wonder at some point, will there be some sort of an agreement in place between the Canadian Hockey League and the NCAA with rules and stuff as to how long a player has to be required to stay with their team when they sign a commitment? Obviously, though, the NCAA a great opportunity for these players who are ready to make that jump, but still, it's going to impact the game, and it's going to impact how do you sell and market the team, because a lot of these guys that you draft, you want to have them on your roster for 4 or 5 years. Think of a guy like Bo Jelsma with the Barrie Colts and what he meant to that leadership. Or you look at the London Knights having 4 seasons with Denver Barkey and Easton Cowan, what they meant to the community. So if you're only getting these players for 2 years, then it's hard to market around those players. Obviously, there's other guys that could come up from tier 2. They could come up from the junior B ranks, junior C, but it's not the same, because that means your league's going to be in flux year in, year out, and you don't get those consistent guys that are around for the 3-4 years segments. Gilroy says, what can teams do differently to incentivize players to stay in the OHL? That's, I think, a big question right now. And if you look at, say, the Kitchener Rangers, for example, they just announced that they're going to be doing some funding to improve the odd, especially for the player side of things. You need to have those amenities, and you need to sell the program and show what your program is capable of. So I think this is where owners are going to have to be a little more creative with their ways to spend their money to make it, give them the best foot forward to compete against some of these NCAA teams that have amazing venues. They have amazing team amenities, player amenities. Obviously, the pay is the big thing. The NIL funding. So that's for the image and likeness funding that players are guaranteed at the NCAA level. I don't know the ins and outs about NIL money. I've been trying to read up with it, keeping up, but that's where maybe there needs to be more of a financial incentive to players to maybe stick around with the Canadian Hockey League. And that's where I think it's going to be really tricky to balance out to keep players in the OHL as opposed to seeing them go off to the NCAA. I wonder where Oster is going. Jacob Oster, I have not yet heard where he is off to. Obviously, it was his overage season, so he'll be going off to, well, now that he's got the NCAA options, he could be another player that goes off to that route, or Canadian University, or he can sign pro, maybe with an ECHL team. But yeah, Jacob Oster, kind of that unsung hero at times for the Oshawa Generals, just how much talent they had up front. There's games where you kind of forgot, oh yeah, they've got Jacob Oster, the OHL goaltender of the year from 2024 on their roster. So yeah, it's going to be very fascinating to see where Jacob Oster goes. And then Mike says, I'm excited to see how the CHL players fare against players as old as 24 in the NCAA, and are Canadian players eligible for the NIL? That's also been a question. That's where I'm trying to figure things out too, because it's that foreign visa thing with you can't be paid, or you can only receive a certain amount of payment. So as a Canadian going into the NCAA, I'm not 100% sure how that goes, because there's, with the whole Porter Martone thing, for example, that's, the rumor is he's being offered quite a large sum to go the NCAA route. But as a Canadian, I think there's a lot of red tape and paperwork. So maybe that's why we haven't heard an official commitment, unlike Malcolm Spence and now Henry Muse and potentially Jack Ivankovic. But this is where more American players could come into the OHL draft, and then they know that they've got their path still to the Canadian or to the NCAA. So we have seen that where there were more American players drafted in the Canadian Hockey League. So it's really going to benefit them. But that is a solid question, Mike, about how players are eligible from Canada for the NIL, because this is something that's new territory that we haven't really seen, and the NCAA is now testing it out. So a lot of unknowns when it comes to this. But that's ever since we had that vote back in November, we saw players coming over from the BCHL, the USHL. We heard the rumors that both Youngston and Muskegon wanted to leave the USHL to join the OHL. So it seemed like everything was coming into the Canadian Hockey League's favor at that point. But now, as the season's gone forward, we're starting to get a little more uncertainty when it comes to the Canadian Hockey League. We've heard reports the National Hockey League wanting to be involved to figure out the junior hockey system. So maybe that's an area that could help with the OHL going forward, is if the NHL comes on board to try and rejig how the junior hockey system is going to work out. But it's really wild just to see where we're at. And it seems like every day there's something new that comes up. There's new questions that arise. And my next thing is for these players to say they go off the NCAA. We'll use Malcolm Spence, for example. What if there's a point where he's not getting a lot of ice time? And is he allowed to come back to the Erie Otters, or is he now a free agent? Like we saw Noah Powell. He was signed by the Oshawa Generals, the OHL trade deadline. So I think that's going to be the next step when players want to come back. Do they just come back to their team, and then how's that going to shape the roster? And there's so many uncertainties. And obviously, I think the Canadian Hockey League during the offseason is going to use this time to try and figure out how this is all going to take shape and how this is all going to work. Now, Mike asks if there are any updates with Youngstown and Muskegon. At this point, if they're in a holding pattern, so they're going to play in the USHL this season and then relook at joining the Ontario Hockey League. They need USA Hockey apparently to sign off on it. That's been the sticking point. So it sounds like money needs to move hands for those two teams to move over to the Canadian Hockey League, the OHL. But right now, both Muskegon and Youngstown, the latest I've heard, is in a holding pattern, and they're going to be joining or sticking around with the USHL for next season. And Zachary says it's going to feel weird not seeing Oster next season. He's been such a staple for the Oshawa Generals. And when you think back of how long this team has been in operation, it's one of the oldest teams in the Canadian Hockey League. And Oster's been making franchise history with the team. It's going to feel like a big hole. But I think for Gravel, he's a young goaltender. I think he's going to be able to step up. Obviously, Oshawa not going to be as strong next season, but give Gravel, I think, some credit. I think he's probably been learning from Oster as he goes along, and I think that he'll fit in. I think he'll fit in well. Maybe Oshawa looks to add another goaltender or another piece, but it is. It's going to feel very strange not having Jacob Oster in net there for Oshawa next season. Ringside with Hits and Clips. He agrees with Zachary, and he's the foundation of that franchise. And that's just like I was saying. It's hard to imagine what the Generals will look like next year without Jacob Oster. But that's the great thing about junior hockey. When we see these players night in, night out, they become a part of the community. They're the fabric of this group, and that's where are we going to lose that going forward? The NCAA thing. Players like Jacob Oster, say 2 years ago, maybe he stood out. Would he have been offered a contract to go join the NCAA? And then you don't have these connections with players over time that are there for their entire career. So, it's going to be fascinating just to see how this all plays out. And Mike says he found out that Jacob Oster is the cousin of Matthew and Brady Tkachuk. That's an awesome connection there. It's amazing how small the hockey world is, like even on that family front. So it's a good tidbit there, Mike, that you shared. And Zachary says Landon Sims going to the Marlies. Yes, he's going to. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out with the Toronto Marlies in the American Hockey League next season. You've got Landon Sims. Does Easton Cowan join his teammate with the Marlies next year, or is he ready to make that step to the Toronto Maple Leafs main club? So it's pretty cool just to see how you see these groupings of players going off to join that next level. So Sim and Easton Cowan, potentially teammates next year with the Toronto Marlies. Mike says it seems CHL players who signed for the NCAA decision, like Parekh and Beckett Seneca, will effectively still only have the CHL or NHL options. That seems to be the case, and I feel as though what we've seen with Zane Parekh with the Calgary Flames at the end of last year, I don't think he's coming back because for him, like you said, he signed that contract before. Do you keep him in the Calgary Flames organization or do you send him back? And if he comes back, what did the Saginaw Spirit do? I had that speculation video last summer, talking about what did the Spirit do with Parekh and Nisa. They decided to stick with it. They had an amazing run, and then Cheryshev joined the team, and they were a threat up until they ran into the Erie Otters in the first round of the playoffs. So with Parekh, if he comes back, is he a trade option, or do they try to make another run with him? But Beckett Seneca, he's such a fun player to watch. I'm glad the Barrie Colts got to play Oshawa the last 2 years, so I could watch him in person, even though Oshawa had the upper hand in both series against the Barrie Colts. But man, oh man, Beckett Seneca, he is going to be so much fun to watch the Anaheim Ducks, especially when they have such great young talent already. If he comes back to the Oshawa Generals, expect him to move, and then that will really help the Generals. Maybe in the next couple of years, we'll see them contend once again. This is a team that doesn't like to lose. They want to be a contender, much like we see with the London Knights. So a Beckett Seneca trade would probably be a huge boost for the organization going forward. And Zachary Candu says Cowan has a nice haircut. Well, it's something, all right. And then Mike, Seneca had an amazing goal versus London. Yeah, that's just the thing, Beckett Seneca, just the moves he has and how he can take over a hockey game. And we saw that in 2024 when he was out of the lineup due to injury. How different that Oshawa Generals team looked up front without Seneca playing. North Bay nearly came back to win that series in 7 in the Eastern Conference Final, and then able to get a win against London in the OHL Final in 24. So it just goes to show how important of a player Beckett Seneca is. And if he comes back to the Generals next year, there's going to be a lot of teams lining up to trade for his services. I was looking at the draft pick database. A team to watch, the Brantford Bulldogs. They have several second-round picks this upcoming year. Actually, over the next 2 drafts, Brantford has a lot of draft capital after selling off with the run where Saginaw came in and picked up Donovan. I think for a second the name slipped me there, but still, watch for the Brantford Bulldogs. Maybe they're a team that could go all in with making a pitch for a player like Beckett Seneca. I'm just putting it out there now. I haven't heard anything at this point. This is just speculation, but I'm just thinking keep an eye on Brantford, especially after the Hymans purchase the team. I think they're going to want to make a splash to make Brantford continue to be a competitive team in the Ontario Hockey League after what Michael Andlauer and his team was able to do. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. And for Easton Cowan, I believe he's probably going to be Toronto Maple Leafs or Toronto Marlies. He'll probably get a look at the start of the season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then depending on the results, may spend some time with the Marlies. Although if he plays like Mitch Marner did when he was in his first few years with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he's going to make it hard for them to decide. And he can come back to the OHL next year, but then he'll be an overager. And I think he's shown that he's exceeded this level and he's ready to move on. I would have even thought this year if he was allowed to play in the American Hockey League, he would have fit in great with the Toronto Marlies this year. So expect for Easton Cowan, Maple Leafs or Marlies for next year. And Zach says, I like Andrew Gibson. He's hard to play against. He was a solid pickup from the Sioux Greyhounds. He was the one that a lot of teams were circling around. I know the Brampton Steelheads were trying to bring him over. Even the Kingston Frontenacs, apparently they were kicking tires trying to bring Andrew Gibson to their franchise. But obviously Oshawa winning on that trade, sending Smith up to Sault Ste. Marie. So yeah, Gibson, a great pickup, and yeah, he was really battle ready for the Oshawa Generals in their run to the OHL final. With Saginaw's key players like Misa, Parekh, Epperson, etc., gone next year, who do you think will step up for the Spirit? I think for this team, it's going to have to be a team effort. It's They did have like Hammer. He stood out as one of the rookies that was maybe he was benefiting from his line mates, but a guy like Hammer, I think he's going to do well. You've got Kluche as well, so they've got that young talent up front. It'd be nice to have Epperson stick around. I know he's already announced that he's moving on with his commitment, but still, I feel as though Saginaw might be middle of the pack. Although if you get Misa and Correct back, well, your guess is as good as mine. Do they make the trades or whatnot? I don't think Misa comes back, but I'm just saying that what if scenario is if they feel he's not ready for the National Hockey League, it's either OHL or NHL if he doesn't have an NCAA commitment. So I know there's a whole bunch of what ifs when it comes to Saginaw Spirit, but I feel as though Saginaw maybe middle of the pack. JB, hey Mike, you never go live. This is cool. Well, I go live when I got a home game on a Thursday night. I'll go on for a little bit. We did the live stream at the OHL trade deadline, and I figured it's the end of the season. I was going to do a news video talking about some of the items going on, and I was like, why don't I go live? I've got some time. My kids are in school. I don't have to pick them up just yet. So let's do a little live stream and have some fun with it. Rinkside with hits and clips. Could we see a division realignment next season with Brantford moving into the Western Conference? It sounds as though we're going to wait until the realignment. Brian Crawford, of course, he's come out and said aggressive expansion is on the horizon for the OHL. So we might not see a realignment right away with Brantford. I think it'll come until they announce new teams. So if you get Muskegon and Youngstown joining the fray, I'm almost wondering if Brantford could then shift into the Western Conference because they're so close to Kitchener, Guelph, and London. It doesn't make sense for them to be in the Eastern Conference, let alone the East Division, because it seems odd having Brantford with Ottawa. They need to have another team in Eastern Ontario. I've been wondering about Cornwall. The mayor of Cornwall has been open about how he would love to have an OHL team back in their city. Belleville's been talked about, but the Senators seem to be committed to staying there for the American Hockey League. But I'm wondering if once we find out what's happening with Muskegon and Youngstown, that's when we'll get the division realigned. Zachary says, I enjoyed Connor Smith. Whatever he chooses to do next, hope he enjoys it. Connor Smith, he fit in great with Brampton last year. Yeah, he brings that pedigree, that championship pedigree from Peterborough with his time there in 2023. It's just too bad, like I said earlier, that things didn't work out with Brampton Steelheads this year. It seemed like they had the right pieces, but they just ran into a very tough team with the Oshawa Generals. With the graduation in Kingston and so many 50-50 players, who do you think returns in Kingston? Well, the Frontenacs, I think it's going to be a bit of a rebuild for them next year, although nobody saw Kingston coming as one of the top teams in the East Division. I feel like with Troy Mann behind the bench, he's one of the top coaches right now in the Ontario Hockey League. Him and UCL Hocus, I feel like those are two coaches right now in the OHL that have the systems in place that can take whatever pieces are given to them and they can make the best of the situation. So for next year, maybe with Battaglia, maybe he can have a bounce back. Tyler Hopkins, I know he didn't produce too much in the OHL playoffs this year, but Hopkins is a guy to keep an eye out for with the Kingston Frontenacs. He's a lot of fun to watch. We know that what he's capable of. He's got the skill set. So Kingston, maybe middle of the pack as well, kind of like Saginaw, but I do like their draft picks. Kuhlman's, I think, going to look great with the Kingston Frontenacs going into next year. It'll take them time to get used to the systems and whatnot, but I do like the foundation that Kingston has. I know there's some who are saying that they shouldn't have done the big trades at the deadline. They mortgaged the future, but for an organization like the Kingston Frontenacs with a fan base that is so hungry for a winner, I feel like they did the right thing for this team. I think they're taking a step in the right direction. And if you build around Hopkins and company, I feel as though the Kingston Frontenacs should be a team to follow in the next couple of years, as long as Troy Mann doesn't get poached by an American Hockey League team or an NHL team. Plans for new stuff on the channel next year. So for the channel, we're looking at maybe doing some more road games with the Barrie Colts. How that's going to look will depend on some conversations during this off season, so stay tuned for that. But for the channel, I know I haven't done a lot of live streams like JD mentioned earlier, but maybe we can try and do a few more live streams during the regular season. Looking to do some more. We'll continue to do interviews with broadcasters from around the Ontario Hockey League. Looking to do another interview with somebody to talk about the NHL draft and the OHL prospects. Last year, I had Sam Cosentino on from Sportsnet. We'll have to wait and see if Sam will come back on or if we can get somebody else. But we'll continue to do the interviews. We'll do the updates. So maybe more live streams and some more road games. Because it was actually kind of fun going back out on the road, seeing the different barns in the Ontario Hockey League. And yeah, so that's the goals right now. But how that looks, still being decided. So stay tuned for that. Mike says apparently the OHL had its best all-time attendance this season, 3.2 million fans. What do you think helped contribute to this year? I've been curious about this because with the way the economy is and how it's expensive to go out to do anything as a family. For instance, we've got 3 kids here, so going out as a family of 5, events could be very expensive. So I don't know how people can go out to more than a game a month if you've got multiple kids. But the OHL has found its niche, and I feel as though with Windsor being better, with Oshawa being more competitive, Kitchener getting back into it, you're starting to see those traditional markets where the fans are coming back. And also with Brampton, they had a jump in attendance compared to Mississauga. So I would say early results suggest that Brampton is a success so far. I know there's fans that are still hard on the Steelheads as an organization. They say the GTA doesn't work, but from what I saw with my visit there, I think there's potential. And maybe it's because they had a good team this year that brought more fans out. But I think for the OHL in general, this is a good year for the product. Considering we could have 3 players go top 3 at the upcoming NHL draft with Schaefer, Misa, Martone. You've got some great talent right now in the Ontario Hockey League. So I think that probably helped with the attendance. And I think there's more marketing, especially on social media. The OHL promoting it. We're also seeing more YouTubers who are doing more of the OHL broadcasting, or even just talking about their teams in general. We're starting to see that the media landscape changed a little bit. So it's I think those are all. It's a bunch of small things, but I think it's all coming together and really helping with the attendance. Where are we at? JB says, you forgot to discuss Quinlan. By the way, we're expecting him to be our starter. Go Sting. I saw your comment, JB, and I was wondering, okay, did he mean the Quinlan? Because I know I missed that one. I need to get circled back. But yes, I believe, the Sarnia Sting. When you look at the Western Conference, Sarnia, and Sam next year are very intriguing teams to watch. When we saw the attack make their moves to bring in Zarowski to join Bowie, I feel as though and Sam will be a surprise in the Midwest. And in the West, I think Windsor's got another strong team, but I think Sarnia with that returning group, and then of course with Quinlan being in between the pipes, Sarnia I think is going to be that thorn in the side of the Windsor Spitfires next year. So yes, I should have mentioned that in another video, but did not get to that. So my apologies. Mike says, I feel Hokus is eyeing an NHL coaching job after his contract is done. It seems as though for Hokus, he did sign that 3-year extension. Remember, 2027, the Kitchener Rangers are expected to put in a bid for the Memorial Cup. So after 2027, we'll see where Hokus goes from here. And I think a team's going to poach him and bring him to the NHL level. He's just been outstanding since joining the Rangers. Considering these last 2 years, many thought Kitchener would be a team maybe battling for a playoff spot, but they ended up challenging London for top spot in the Midwest Division. So after 2027, I wonder if that's when we're going to hear more conversations about Hokus eventually moving on from the Ontario Hockey League. And a lot of coaches are for rumblings from JB. Charles says, who do you see staying or moving as Bowler tries to load up? He doesn't have room for the 08s and 06s, especially on the blue lines. He also needs to add some 07s to balance out the roster. Windsor, I think, is going to be a fun team for next year. Fans, I think, were already kind of spoiled a little bit with how the team had the success this year after what happened the previous season. For Bill Bowler, he's been a great architect for this Windsor Spitfires team. And for Ethan Belchis, I think he's going to have a monster year going into his second season with the Windsor Spitfires. So, yeah, if the Spitfires, they've got some draft capital to make some moves. I feel like they're a team that they don't need to make anything drastic, but if they could insulate what they have already, maybe add to their top six, their blue line, maybe add a piece there as well. Joey Costanzo is going to be a question mark. I know a lot of people have been hard on him in the past, but he has shown at times that he can be a capable goaltender. So I think, as you mentioned, this is a team that they don't have a lot of room. So that's why I think maybe they'll insulate with some minor tweaks and whatnot. And hopefully for this team, they can build off what they have with JC Lemieux and Ethan Belches. Does Protas come back? I have my doubts, but imagine if Protas comes back for another year with the Windsor Spitfires. That offense becomes that much more lethal. So Bowler's got some work to do, and it's going to be very fun just to see how it all plays out when it comes to the Windsor Spitfires. Zachary says, I'm not hard on them, and I think that's in regards to Brampton. I'm not saying everybody is, but there is a portion of the fan base of the junior hockey world that can be hard on Brampton, which I think in the past we've seen with the Battalion when they were there, the fan support was lacking, but product on the ice, understand Butler, it was defense first. There was not a lot of offense. Aside when they had Cody Hodgson and Matt Duchene up front, that was when their offense had a little more creativity. But now that we've got the Steelheads, they're a team that's got some size, and I think the fans kind of embracing the Trout a little more with what they have. Mike says, I think Four Nations Face-Off also contributed to hockey's overall popularity again and drawing in new fans. I would agree with the Four Nations, especially when we've had all the stuff going on politically between the U.S. and Canada. The Four Nations just kind of just made it blow up a lot more with hockey. But I remember back in the fall, the OHL had posts saying that numbers were showing an increase. So maybe that also was another leap when it comes to the 3.2 million fans in attendance. But yeah, there's hockey right now seems to be in a very, very popular spot, and we'll see what happens next, especially going into next season if they can continue this momentum. I would think they continue it, but it's how much longer can this go, especially with uncertainty with players coming and going with the NCAA. That's going to be, I think, a key question for the league going forward. Zachary says I'm going to miss Silva and Leskovar as well. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces there with Brampton moving on. Although I'm glad Von Richter is still there. I think Parker Von Richter, my favorite name to call whenever the Steelheads are in Barrie. It's I don't know, there's something about Von Richter. It sounds like a knight, the Dark Knight or whatever, Von Richter. But yeah, I do. Yeah, there's so many changes right now going on with the Steelheads. So yeah, Silva and Leskovar, they'll definitely be missed. Mike says, do you feel the OHL will adopt playoff reseeding after each playoff round like they do in the WHL and the QMJHL? I believe the OHL would do well with the reseeding. I know there's been a lot of talk about the points with the division because London, Kitchener, points-wise were 1 and 2, but Windsor, because they have the division, got the second seed, which meant home ice advantage against Kitchener in the second round. So I think it would make sense on that. You want to reward the teams that have more points. Obviously, the division winners should get an advantage, but I think that makes sense in the first round. But seeing the early results in the Q and in the dub, I think the OHL would do well with reseeding. I almost wonder if we should go to that next step and have reseeding for the conference finals. So instead of an East versus West, why not reseed and just have it as a semifinal? So then you could have an OHL final between, for instance, if this year we could have had London Kitchener. Just think of the rivalries and the excitement if you could have teams meeting in an OHL final such as that. Even Oshawa Peterborough. How amazing would it be to have the two oldest teams in the OHL go head to head for the OHL championship? So maybe we need to go with that step. I do agree. Maybe we do need to have some adjustments to the playoff structure, but yeah, the Dub and the Q seem to be on that right step. So we'll see if the OHL does that as well. Zachary says, yeah, Steelheads, and I love when we throw a fish on the ice after every goal. Yes, it would be. It's fun seeing each market and how they do things differently. The Steelheads with the trout on the ice, Wolves with the wolf that goes through the rafters. Every team does something a little unique, which that's why I love going on the road. I love seeing all the other arenas and what fans do to celebrate their teams. ringside with hits and clips. I think Peterborough will be a stronger competitor next season compared to the last 2 seasons. I really like what the Petes have done these last 2 years. And what's even better is the fans in Peterborough have embraced it. They win the championship in 2023, and they know they're in for a tough time. But you're bringing in guys like with Taylor, with McGregor. This team, a lot of young talent. So I feel as though Peterborough will be that team that takes that next step. I think maybe they challenge Brantford a bit in the East Division. I think the Bulldogs may have the inside track, although Kingston might have something to say as well. But yes, I agree. Peterborough will be a much stronger team next year. They will make playoffs. I guess that'll be my hot take. I'll say that here in June 2025 that the Peterborough Petes will make the playoffs when it comes to 2026. Paul says, I'm worried about how the Barrie Colts might shape up next season. With the Barrie Colts, I think the one thing that they could, Colt fans can take, some excitement in is the fact that Cole Bodwin should be back. We've seen how much of a beast he can be. Riley Patterson's great chemistry there with Bodwin. And Kayshawn Aitchison should be back. He'll be a top 10 pick likely at the NHL draft. Maybe he sticks around. Maybe a team will want to take an extra look. But I think for the Barrie Colts, they want to build around those three: Bodwin, Patterson, and Aitchison. Brad Gardner, of course, wasn't signed by the Dallas Stars, so he could come back as an overager for Barrie next year. So I feel as though the Colts are in a position where they should contend, but it's hopefully for the Barrie Colts, the pieces all come together, but there's never a guarantee that that's the case. Look how long it took for Brant Clark to come back from the LA Kings. Do we have a situation like that with Cole Bodwin? Those are some big questions there, but I feel as though for the Colts, they've got the core, and we'll just see how it goes from here. Can Ben Hrebeck build on what he had last year? If he can be one of the top goaltenders in the OHL, that's a great step, I feel, for this team. And I don't know. I think for the Barrie Colts, they should be one of the top teams, I think, in the Central Division. North Bay is going to be better. Niagara, depending on what happens with that team, they'll contend. Sudbury, I think they're a team that's going to go into a bit of a rebuild. And then Brampton, maybe into a rebuild. So your top three in the division should be Niagara, Barrie, North Bay. And I feel as though for the Colts, maybe they have the edge on North Bay, although with Parker Vaughan and Shamar Moses now battalion, I think that just adds to that rivalry, and they'll love to, get those wins over the next few seasons against their former team. So it's going to be fascinating in the Central. Princess Flora, glad I checked your channel and saw you were live. Well, thank you very much, Princess Flora 42, for coming on the live stream. I thought I'd do something a little different today. I was going to do a news video, and I figured let's do a live stream because today actually is the start of the OHL trade window now that the Memorial Cup is over. So expect to see some moves. Last year we had early on Flint Firebirds are a busy team making deals with Sudbury and Kingston, and so I would expect we're going to see some moves in the coming days when it comes to the OHL team. So Princess Flora, thanks for coming on. Zachary says, "What's your favorite mascot in the OHL?" Oh, that's a tough one because there's some good mascots around the Ontario Hockey League. I'm thinking Bones in Niagara. He's a fun one. I also like Cubby and Owen Sound. He's a wild card at times at the Bayshore. So some good mascots around the Ontario Hockey League. So I'd probably go with maybe Bones or Cubby. Maybe even Bruiser in Brantford. He's a good one too. Am I the only one who sees this year's Cup final matchup as what the NHL wanted? Potentially, especially when you've got a Connor McDavid type going up against the Florida Panthers, the reigning champs. I think this is going to be a great Stanley Cup final with a lot of OHL flair. You've got McDavid, you've got Connor Brown, the two teammates who played Erie Otters, Matthew Tkachuk, of course, the London Knights, Jeff Skinner. I'm so glad he's finally getting NHL playoff experience after being with the Kitchener Rangers. He was a great piece for that team. And then gets drafted by Carolina, plays for Buffalo, doesn't get any playoff time. I'm glad to see Skinner finally playing 2 games. I hope he's in the lineup for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. But a lot of OHL flair in this upcoming NHL Stanley Cup final. What do you think about Peterborough signing Gary DiConzolo He had 147 points in 62 games with Shattuck. I think this could be a steal for the Peterborough Petes. With him being a late pick like that, you have to give credit to the scouting department and management to come to this agreement. Hopefully, what he was able to do with St. Mary's will carry over into the Ontario Hockey League, but that just adds to another threat here for this Peterborough Petes team, and that's why they will likely, like I said earlier, be a playoff team in 2026. I remember last trade deadline stream, only Sudbury was making trades. Yeah, that had me questioning whether or not I should be doing live streams at the OHL trade deadline. Because these last two trade deadline live streams, pretty quiet. Although it got pretty lively once we knew that Henry Muse was on the way and whatnot. So then it was okay. Who's going back to Ottawa? Is it going to be Nolan Collins or whomever? And so yeah, it took a bit, but still, maybe we'll see if we can get this going again. I was hoping for a Moncton Medicine Hat final, but London takes it again. I don't think you're the only one, Princess Flora. I think that there's a few OHL fans who were hoping for a Moncton Medicine Hat final, but give credit to the Knights. They were able to play a disciplined game there in the OHL or in the Memorial Cup final, and were able to get that victory. So it's I think you're not alone with that. Zachary says he likes Saga. Yeah, Saga's a good one too. I remember when he was, I think it was in Mississauga where he would come out on the ATV. He was it Saga or was it the Maniac or when it was the Majors? Either way, I remember going to a game when it was the Hershey Center, being surprised that mascot was allowed to go loose out there on an ATV out on the ice. Mike says Sam Bennett as well. He might get a $10 million contract. Yeah, there's also Bennett. So yeah, like I said, there's so many great OHL players in the upcoming Stanley Cup final. And where does Bennett go? Does he stay in Florida or does he end up in Toronto Maple Leafs? I know there's a lot of Leaf fans who were annoyed by Bennett's antics, but I'm sure he's that player that if he's on your team, you'd love to have. Ringside with hits and clips. Austin Elliott was a huge piece for London after being claimed off waivers from Saskatoon. Could we see more of these transactions throughout all CHL leagues? And the funny thing with that is Barrie was the team that picked him up off waivers to pass on to the London Knights. So Barrie had a hand in helping the London Knights in the Memorial Cup. Maybe we'll get an Austin Elliott appreciation night for the Barrie Colts. I know that won't likely happen, but still, it'd be kind of hilarious just to see that. But we have seen that in the past. Like even look at Andre Loshko with the Niagara Ice Dogs. He came over through the waiver wire from Chicoutimi, and there was some unknowns how he would do at Niagara, but he was one of the top centermen in the Ontario Hockey League last year. So Niagara doing a great job finding Loshko and getting him to play for the Ice Dogs last season. He was a key factor in why Niagara was surprising many in the first half of the season. So I think this is something that maybe we see a little more of, where players are going to be moving around and they have more of an impact, like an Elliott, like a Loshko. But it's I think probably on the right track there. Well, Mike says London may be the most despised team by the rest of the OHL and CHL. Yes, I think there's a lot of fans of junior hockey that wish their team was having the success the London Knights are having year in, year out. But I had a few people message me leading up to the Memorial Cup, just their frustrations that London was there again. But I have a friend of mine who's a London fan, and he was just going on. It's London versus everybody, and that's exactly where that comes in. Zachary says he would love to have Bennett. And Princess Flora says, Leafs fan here, Bennett would work if Marner walks first. And the AHL Laval's down 3-0 against Charlotte. I think the Rocket ran out of juice. It's, the AHL, I was really pulling for maybe a Laval, Abbotsford, American Hockey League final, just getting those two Canadian teams. But, give credit to Charlotte, that team digging deep, winning the 2 games on the road. And it's a weird playoff format. The 2-3-2, where if you're supposed to have home ice advantage, but you kind of lose it as soon as you get that split, because then Charlotte, of course, 3 games on home ice, so games 3, 4, and 5, chance to close it out. So it'd be really interesting to see if they went to another playoff format model for the playoffs. But still, a tough situation there for Laval. And Ringside says a London, Florida match. Could you imagine if they allowed that? I I'd be curious. What would the end result be? And how many fans would suddenly be Florida Panther fans? And Mike says, which team is losing the most key players next year? I think it may be Saginaw. I think it's probably between Saginaw and Brampton going into next year, especially if the speculation about Porter Martone also going off the NCAA. I think Saginaw, Brampton losing the most pieces going into next year, but it's even for Sudbury losing a guy like Henry Muse. Like that was such a big trade with the Ottawa 67s. They gave up so many picks and whatnot, and then for Muse just to walk away. So I feel as though almost every team right now losing some key pieces and not really expecting that to happen per se. So actually, right now I'm looking at the time. We've been going at this for 55 minutes, almost an hour. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Got to make sure I can keep my voice. I still got my radio job to do in the morning. But for all those who tuned in here for the live stream, thank you very much for your support. It's been a fun season covering the Ontario Hockey League once again. I will still be posting videos during the off season. I'm going to be doing an OHL season by season history series, and that's going to begin. I think I've got it starting on Thursday. I pre-recorded a bunch of the videos, so we're going to have the off-season covered. But if there are trades or any announcements, I'll have videos here on the channel just to update you. Also looking to continue to do some interviews along the way, especially with the NHL draft coming up. So stay tuned for that. But again, thank you very much, everyone who is a subscriber. The channel passed 840 subscribers, which is remarkable. So thank you very much, everybody. And let's keep this ball rolling. And we'll have another fun season next year. Maybe with, I guess I'm getting the vibe that I need to do more live streams. So we'll do this again. I'll try and figure out a way to make it a more regular thing. So again, thanks everyone. And we will talk to you guys again soon.